Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. It's Monday, and we still got to talk about what the Steelers didn't do right in that loss to the Cleveland Browns. One of the things involves defense and, of course, TJ Watt. I want to talk about some coaching changes that could really help with that, as well as a report about Russell Wilson and his future with the Steelers and the state of the AFC North with the big Ravens Chargers game coming up tonight. All here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show in your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. Thank you for making us your first listen every day, because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Steelers fans, so you've had the weekend to lick your wounds, and let's get back to reassessing things. Now, for one, you see I am still in my Airbnb if you're watching on YouTube, out in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, finishing up my coverage of the Greenbrier tournament for Pitt basketball. You can read all about that at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and check out all the things there. It was a really exciting time, but I'm filming this very late because Sunday went really long with a triple overtime game before Pitt, and shot clock's not working, and a lot of stuff there. So I apologize if this is a rougher episode, but please pardon our dust as we're here on the road and I'm working late to try to put together a show here. But and because of that, I was a very busy weekend. I also didn't have time to put together my grades for this game or do a full all 22 review of this. However, I did have time to go back over this game, and I have some serious thoughts about what the Steelers need to do moving forward. Now, we talked about my thoughts on offense a lot in this last game. I want to talk more about defense, and I want to specifically talk about the defense's best player, and that's TJ Watt, because he wasn't their best player in this game. In the game, when you looked at it, he had 2 total pressures, no sacks, no quarterback hits, 2 hurries. So he did at least chase Jameis Winston. He had 2 tackles, both of them 2 solo tackles and an assist tackle. But he had two of those tackles being registered as stops against the run. But when you look at that kind of production, you want more out of TJ Watt. And I think it was even more glaring to Steelers fans when you saw Myles Garrett on the other side get 3 sacks in the first half. Now, I reiterate, the Steelers offense, I think, switched up a lot of good things, and they erased him from the rest of the game. But still, you wanted TJ Watt to be able to show that he was still the best defender in the NFL. On this day, Myles Garrett won out, and he got to talk his trash afterwards. But I think there's a change here, and we've talked about it on this show before, that maybe does need to happen to help TJ Watt still be in the effective game record that he can be. And there's times he'll still get it. But if you look at right now on the year, we talked about it about a month ago when the Steelers played the Giants right before their bye, and there was a key play at the end of the game where TJ Watt sacked Daniel Jones, stripped him of the football, recovered it. It was a huge red zone turnover the Steelers forced, and it was a big play. But that was a result of the Steelers switching things around on defense. Why? Because as we talked about in that play, it was just a simple four plays where TJ Watt didn't line up over the right tackle, but he lined up over the left. And then on that play, he switched back to back to his normal position. And when he did, the Giants forgot to check into the protection that's going to give an extra chip blocker on his side. That allowed him to get a clean one-on-one look. That allowed him to get a clean one-on-one win and make the game-changing play. So with that, we thought, okay, cool. We might see a little bit more of that. The problem is that hasn't happened. When you look at his snap counts and alignments since those 4 snaps that he got against the Giants, he's only lined up on the right side of the defense one time since then, and that one time came against the Ravens in week 11. Now, part of this I do think might have to do something with Alex Highsmith. Mike Tomlin said on multiple occasions about how Highsmith is, his health has kind of hindered them at times for how flexible they'd like to be with their pass rush. And I think that might be what he's talking about now, because if you remember, these 2 guys have their entire careers played on the sides that they're on, and they've been able to win like that. But I think the Steelers might need to acknowledge something with TJ Watt, because you look at his numbers over the past year, and he's still a great player and he's still an all pro level player, but he might need a little bit more help getting off against these chips, these double teams, that what teams are doing trying to do to take him out of the game. And that means moving him around more, giving him chances to rush from different places, to make offensive lines guess where he is, and make it not as easy as, hey, we know he's lining up on that side, so every play we're going to design something that's going to limit him on that side as we go different directions. I know the Steelers defense wants to dictate the pace of play, but I think this is what you can do to counteract that: is move him around more. Give him assignments in different spots, especially just on the simple other side of the field. And even with Alex Highsmith hurt and that limiting their chance to do that, the Steelers have seen Nick Herbig step up. They've added Preston Smith, and I get that they might want to not ask those guys to step into a position that they're not used to, and take away TJ Watt from his where he gets his prime numbers. But I think it's worth the look here. Let's look at the 3 games that TJ Watt has played since getting 6 pressures and 2 sacks against the Giants, including the game winning, well, not game winning, but a big helping red zone turnover against the Giants. Against the Commanders, he had 2 pressures, 2 quarterback hits. Against the Ravens, 3 pressures, 1 sack, and a quarterback hit. Also had a hurry, but and you look at that, and then you see 2 pressures. You see a guy go from 6 pressures and multiple sacks to averaging just a little over 2 pressures per game in the next 3 and only 1 sack. That's not what you want out of TJ Watt. But again, when you look at the snap alignment numbers, he's lining up on one side again. Now, Alex Highsmith has been hurt. He did not play last week. This past week, he did not play the week before. But in week 10, when Alex Highsmith was hurt, he played 51 snaps. TJ Watt also played a lot of snaps in that game, and it didn't matter. In fact, when you go back and you look at TJ Watt's alignment numbers, that wasn't even the game where the 1 snap on the opposite side came from for him. And to me, that is the issue right here that Teryl Austin and Mike Tomlin face. They have to make things easier for TJ Watt. They have to make the offenses guess where he's coming from. They have to mix things up a little bit more. And I know there's a lot of people out there that have not liked Teryl Austin. They don't think that he does a good job. I think he does do a good job. I'm not here. This isn't me here saying that this is malpractice and they deserve to be fired, but this is me acknowledging just something I think that they need to incorporate, and that they look like they were working to incorporate at one point in time. And maybe Alex Highsmith injury halted that up, but I think it's time that they start moving TJ Watt, especially around, trying to set up different looks, trying to force offenses to have to communicate that more about where he is, where they're going to block, what they're going to do to handle it. And because the more, I say this all the time, the more you think make someone think in the game of football, the more chances you get them to making a mental error, and the more chances you get to catch them trying to fix that mental error and making a big play of your own. So with that being said, I think that what Teryl Austin and Mike Tomlin have to do, they have to, if they're unsure about something with TJ Watt, or they're unsure about something with with Nick Herbig or Preston Smith, or whatever they're doing on that side, and the flipping of it, they need to figure out a way to get around that, because I truly do think that part of what's going to really help with the defense is getting TJ Watt back and being a game wrecker. And again, I think there's always chances for people to look back and say, oh, well, they should have done this, or they should have done that. I think the Steelers are in an interesting position right now with how their defense is played. Teryl Austin, when he came in, the Steelers secondary was not that complex in their coverage schemes. In fact, there weren't many coverage disguises for the Steelers. They were very much a blitz-heavy team with Keith Butler. He's a linebackers coach. Teryl Austin, DB's coach. So I think that he's helped the Steelers defensive backs get better over the years. But I think that part of what's happening here is part of what made him. I think sometimes people say, "Oh, well, he's not a good defensive coordinator." Look at these times where he calls a play and it doesn't work. And listen, I agree. There's times that he makes mistakes, but here's the thing about that is when you look at how he's, sometimes it's about not trying to get too complicated. That allows that allows a defense to thrive. One thing I think Teryl Austin has done at times, he's let things be simple. Minka Fitzpatrick's talked about this. Sometimes you got to let things be simple, not get too complex, and that allows defensive players to play faster, harder, jump over passes, be ready for everything. I think that's what the Steelers have been trying to do, and they've done it very well. But here's the thing: they now need to be better at it. And I think that with the way that they're trying to play defense, they're going to need to win more consistently up front, and winning more consistently up front is going to require them being kind of being more chaotic, more forcing more offensive lines to have to work harder to figure out where TJ Watt is, where Cam Hayward is, where it's Alex Highsmith is, where Nick Herbig is, where's a blitz coming from. If Teryl Austin can do that and Mike Tomlin can do that, I think it would go a long way to helping this defense get back to prominent form. Otherwise, you're probably going to see some more frustrating losses coming up soon for the Steelers in the coming weeks. But and with the Bengals game coming up, that's pretty huge. But I think those are legitimate challenges that wouldn't take too much. It seemed like TJ Watt was fine playing on the opposite side of where he normally plays. Let's see what happens when things roll around and we get to see if they move him around, if the defense gives up big plays. Those will be the determining factors, in my opinion, to see if the Steelers do want to go along with the idea of switching things up and changing where TJ Watt lines up typically over the right tackle instead of the left tackle. And in this game, it looks like he'll still be in that spot, but I think it would be really smart to move him over and not permanently, just temporarily, just be like, hey, going to give you some shots here, force them to move around. We still need you to be the playmaker. I think it's a very reasonable move the Steelers could make to change things up. I think there's other things to change things up, but when you talk about a really important one and it involves your best player, I do think that it's one that they should consider. We'll talk more about that here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I also want to talk about this report on Russell Wilson, whether he's staying, and dig into that. We'll do that all next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you that this show is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Hillsdale College is the place that you can go to learn things fast. Hillsdale College offers several different courses across the board, so you're not wasting time scrolling through mind-rushing content for hours and hours. You're learning and improving yourself. Hillsdale College offers more than 40 free online courses: Constitution 101, Intro to Free Market Economics, the Great American Story, Rise and Fall of the Roman Republic, and so much more. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. The hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. Hillsdale.edu/lockedon. We're also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks is the fun new daily fantasy platform that everyone needs to start playing right now. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with any injury insurance policy. Your lineup stay in place even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup alive. And now on Prize Picks, you can win up to 100 times your money with as little as making 4 correct picks. Prize Picks includes NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, college sports, and so much more. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code LockedOnNFL and you'll get $50 instantly. When you play just $5, that's code LockedOnNFL to receive a $50 bonus for just playing $5. Prize Picks, run your game. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our episode here, and I feel like we got to address some sort of semi-breaking news that came out a little bit, and it was NFL insider Diana Rossini who reports that the Steelers are kind of expecting to, or the Steelers are. It's expected now that Russell Wilson is going to stay with the Steelers. Now, We don't know if that means like a big contract extension, what kind of a contract extension, what that does for Russell Wilson, what it does for Justin Fields. Um, but I think that there's a big challenge that the Steelers face right now as far as who they want to be and how long they want to be like that. We've talked about the wanting to improve the run game, the drafting of the offensive lineman, what they're trying to be like that, the defense that they've invested a lot into. Now they're trying to invest in the quarterback position. They're trying to figure things out there, and that's where I think that this Steelers team is. If Russell Wilson could end up being the guy that you want to stick with for the next few years. But I also think they need to be careful because they just learned a harsh lesson with Ben Roethlisberger about what happens when you leave a guy in for too long in his career, and eventually he becomes kaput. And that's where the Steelers were with Ben Roethlisberger. It put them in some tough salary cap situations. And they're just now getting out of those. I think this is an opportunity right now for the Steelers to see like, hey, I wouldn't just sign the dotted line yet, but if you get these amount of numbers here and there, there could be something. There could be something there. Um, I think Russell Wilson has played well. I don't think he's played great, but I do think he's played well for the Steelers. I think he's made some really good reads. I think he's the best at reading the field out of between him and Fields. Um, but at the same time, I also think Russell Wilson, can still do some other things better. And so I look at this decision, and again, it's just a report. It's just this time of the year, although historically this is the one position that the Roonies would break their rule for in trying to sign somebody long term. I'm not so sure that'll happen with this one, but I do think it's something to look at for sure and how they handle a guy who's going to turn 36 in literally 4 days after this podcast. So, how do they avoid, being in the too late bus of getting a quarterback? I think it's going to take Russell Wilson kind of to figure some things out here and try to make it happen on offense. Because I do think he's figuring things out. I do think that he's getting better. I do think that he's learning, and I do think that he's attacking. I think that's another important part of this. Is I think that he is like you look at that Calvin Austin throw. He is locking in. He is working to prevent things. He's just figuring out his chemistry in the team, and that's really important. You need to be able to do that. And the other thing about this situation is that you want to keep him from being able to leave and go get other people's, go get big money elsewhere, but you also don't want to pay him big money. And that's where I think the tricky part is that the Steelers have to thread the needle if they were going to bring him in because, or to keep him around because if Russell Wilson wants a big bag, that you just can't afford to. You still got to pay Pickens. You still got to re-sign. You still got all these other concerns that you got on your docket right now, and I just feel like that's not at the list, at least for me, when it comes to figuring out extra stuff. So for Russell Wilson, if he can just play, his job and do well, then maybe they revisit this, and it's a definite signing. But I think they need to revisit this because I'm not so sure that this is the right move right now to try to sign him to. And again, it was just a deal to sign him up to, extension, but not and no details are given on what the extension is. But how long is that extension? How long would he be with the Steelers? Would he be the Steelers' new friend? Those are all the questions that I'm getting, and I think I think it's going to come down to just how he performs the rest of this season. Everyone's looking at the two quarterback situation, and I'm just like, I feel like it's both we've kind of exhausted it. That both guys, Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, have kind of made their points. So about who they are. And again, Russell Wilson, I think, wins out because of his ability to see the field and throw the ball downfield and make reads quicker and faster. That's something that he has to keep doing if he's with the Steelers. But yeah, so I really think that if the Steelers are basically going to extend Russell Wilson at the end of the year, before the end of the year, whatever, I do think it would be I do think it would be good to keep him around. I think the big question would be money, because here's the thing: if you're Russell Wilson and you just made $38 million off a contract that you didn't have to even really work for in Denver, you probably want another payday. But we also know that uh, Russell Wilson has been open about trying to win and trying to find a winning environment. And like right now, he's 4-1 as a starter for the Steelers, and he's feeling it. And I think that that's a really good thing um, in that spot there. So I think that right now at quarterback, you don't want to have to play too many guessing games, and he gives you a non-guessing game situation there at quarterback. So shout out um, to people that have been arguing in the comment section for weeks about Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, and I guess it's been months now. But I look at this. I look at what he's done so far, and I think there's winning material there. There's an extra boost of confidence in the air, and I think that's why there's so many people looking at this and think and saying, "Whoa, okay," and taking that as the gospel. So Russell Wilson, should they extend him? I think so, but it needs to be for reasonable money because they still need to sign several other guys, George Pickens including. And if he does the right things and includes the right things, I think it would be. I think Russell Wilson could be part of a really special team for the next few years instead of just being, a backup or someone that didn't want you in the first place. So I think Russell Wilson's found a home in Pittsburgh, and I think that he should. It'd be interested to see if he pushes to stay in Pittsburgh and if it's more of a mutual agreement between him and his agent and the Steelers front office. We'll see how all that plays out over time with Russell Wilson's contract and how he's going to do that. But we got to talk about the state of the AFC North because the Steelers just lost their first divisional loss of the year. And the Ravens play tonight. The Browns get a game up. The Bengals, were able to rest. We'll talk about all that action and where things are standing right here and right now. Next on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stay with us. We're right back. But first, remind you, this show is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel Sportsbook is the #1 sportsbook in America. When you go on FanDuel.com, you'll see all the deals that you could enjoy, whether it's NBA, NHL, MLB, NFL, college sports. There's so many different ways to enjoy America's #1 sportsbook. And right now on America's #1 sportsbook, the Steelers open as 2.5-point road underdogs to the Cincinnati Bengals for their Sunday 1 p.m. kickoff. The Steelers money line is +122. The Ravens money line, the Bengals money line is -144. The over/under is set at 46.5 points. That seems like a lot of decent bit of scoring. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. You can get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first bet of $5 or more today. That's $150 of free bets to new customers if you're just able to hit on a $5 bet only on FanDuel.com. Just visit FanDuel.com today to download America's #1 sportsbook. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Again, I want to repeat my apology on pardoning our dust this week with how we've covered the Greenbrier tournament with Pitt basketball and everything. We've kind of been on the road. We're going to be a little bit on the road next week, too. At the end of the week, although I might be able to do all my shows before I go to Columbus, but plan is to go to Columbus for Pitt, Ohio State on Friday after Thanksgiving, and then after that, going to the Bengals game in Cincinnati on Sunday. So that'll be a unique experience because I'll be recording from there. So we got a lot of that coming up. Please, work with us and be patient with us as we're trying to work through any technical difficulties that naturally because we come from recording on the road. But all that being said, speaking of Cincinnati and in their home, let's talk about the state of the AFC North because right now I think it's an interesting spot. The Steelers missed their opportunity to build up another half game on the Bengals, and now are looking at they need the Chargers to give them a hand a little bit. To keep that distance with the Ravens. Otherwise, if the Ravens win, they go to 8-4. You're 8-3. You're only a half game back. That's not where you want to be. And if the Chargers can win, it can at least hold them off from getting there. I think that's going to be very important. But I also think that when we talk about these schedules and who these teams are, very intrigued to see how the AFC North is planning to is going to actually shake out here because a lot of these teams aren't out of it. The Browns definitely are. I know that's That's kind of not controversial. But the Bengals, a lot of people are believing in them still. I still don't. I mean, they're what, 4-7 right now. They are coming off a bye, but I look at that situation there and I think, like, man, they got the Steelers, they got the Cowboys who look better in their Sunday showing. They got the Steelers twice. This could be a rough road for the Bengals there. I don't think it's a guarantee. And again, they're only 4 teams that they've beaten. The Bengals, that is, are the Raiders, the Browns, the Giants, and the Panthers. So I think there's certainly opportunities for the Bengals moving forward, but it's good. They also have a tough road to hoe. Just like the Steelers do. Looking at the Ravens again, outside of just this game tonight with the Chargers, they also have a tougher road. The Chargers are no slouches, and we just saw how the Philadelphia Eagles just whooped up on the Rams. They played the Ravens play the Rams, or excuse me, the Eagles on December 1st, and then they get a bye week. They get the Giants. That's fine. Okay, that's cool. I get that one. But then they get the Steelers again, and then they get the Texans. They finish against the Browns. The Texans and Steelers and Eagles, those are all 3 tough games for the Ravens, which again, when I go back to my point about this gauntlet the Steelers are going through right now, they won the first 2, lost the third. But if they are able to bounce back and take control against Cincy, they'll get the Browns back at home, not on a short week, and maybe you can deal out some justice there. If you win on those two games, it gives you a big boost. You get double-digit wins already, and then you're just in that 4-game stretch to end the season. Eagles in Philadelphia, Ravens in Baltimore, Steelers at home, Bengals at home. So lots of stuff that I think could play out here. I think there's, the Steelers run of the Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs is still just insane how that lines up. But I think that one thing that they have going for them, when you look at how this team, has played, I do think that there are parts of this team that can come together a bit better and win the games that are the big games. And I think one thing that's true for every team is that when you're a good team and you're working to get better, it takes time to see those results, but eventually when you do, it usually proves itself out over time. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how things move forward with this Steelers team and the AFC North. But the Steelers are still on top. Even if the Ravens win, they'd be a half game back. And I think it's gonna be an interesting chase here down the stretch here. Lots to still go over, lots to still think about. I'm gonna try to get my grades done for tomorrow. I will be leaving tomorrow morning, or today, I guess technically because we're tomorrow recording. But I will be leaving Monday morning, so I'll be back at home, being able to do full shows, and that should be that'll make for a good time. Getting back home and being able to use my own computer and such. So thanks again for everyone for tuning in to the Monday edition of the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. Find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, breaking down your Pittsburgh Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.